On the end, we can do a little bit of elbow room, but sorry, it's tight.
I'm fine.
Is there room for your one elbow, not so much the other elbow?
I tried a couple different, and then I realized we actually didn't have enough chairs, and I was like, I'm gonna give Kyle the elbow room.
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, put me on. Put me on.
It's gonna be like Thanksgiving.
I didn't take it.
And Anthony, you ended up on the leg too. Well, the curtain's here, it helps. But I'm on the leg. I'm like, all right, I'll take the leg.
If you're at the table,
And that's it.
Hi! I didn't recognize you. It's nice to meet you. I don't know why. Well, now that I know you look exactly the same. Sounds like this.
That's it. Starting tonight anyway. It is. We're hoping that we're very tight on our agenda so that we're not driving on the snow. But I think it's like 9. 9 or 10. Oh, really? That's awesome. Oh, I didn't have time for the ball. Usually, like, if it's, I think, you know, like, checking your data. Oh, those people are in New Jersey, though. You just can't tell.
Wait, they're pretty good.
I'm just listening for
Right? You like that. Yeah. I think you're here.
Yeah. Oh, for your other coach?
Blend in. We're not gonna be letting anything go. We're talking about your car.
I know.
Because my voice is.
I have really good hearing.
Well, it appears that it's 6:30, and I certainly want to get things started because I know we're all looking forward to a little bit of Maine winter weather tonight, so we want to keep things moving. So I would like to call to order the 8th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and if Tammy could lead us in the pledge and the flag is back here by my left shoulder.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our first order of business is to act on the minutes of December 8th. Any errors or omissions on those? If not, you can accept them under general consent. That brings us to public comment. And as has been our practice, I'll read through our public comment policy. I think we have printed copies in the welcome to our school board meeting templates that
I took them out
detail
this
that.
time. My apologies.
If anybody needs that, we do have printed copies of those, but I will read through. Although board meetings are not public forums, the board will provide appropriate opportunities for members of the public to express opinions and concerns related to the matters concerning education in MSAD 52 schools. The intent is to allow a fair and adequate opportunity for the public to be heard, while ensuring that the time allowed for public discussion does not interfere with the fulfillment of the scheduled agenda. The board will designate a portion of its agenda as an opportunity for public participation. During the time allotted for public participation, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personal matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. Members of the public may address the board within the guidelines provided in this policy. The chair shall be responsible for maintaining proper order and compliance with these guidelines. The following guidelines shall apply to public participation at board meetings. Citizens and employees of the school unit are welcome to participate as provided in this policy. Others may be recognized to speak at the chair's discretion. Individual employees and/or employee groups will not be permitted to discuss matters for which complaint or grievance procedures are provided. The chair may limit the time allotted for comments on a particular topic, as well as the time each individual may speak. We're at 3 minutes on that time limit currently. In the event of a sizable audience, the chair may require persons interested in speaking to sign up so they may be called on in a fair and efficient manner. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin talking. Speakers are not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. All speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to particular board members of the superintendent only with approval of the chair. Requests for information or concerns that require further research may be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time. Members of the board and the superintendent may ask questions of any person who addresses the board, but are expected to refrain from arguing or debating issues. Questions must be addressed through the chair, and I think I owe an apology to Mrs. Flewelling. Last time I did not, she addressed the board and I did not adhere to G. So I will ask board members, if you have questions, address them to me, and then I will certainly move along to some of our speakers if we find ourselves in that situation again. No complaints or allegations will be allowed at board meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. Personal matters or complaints concerning student or staff issues will not be considered in a public meeting, but will be referred through established policies and procedures. In order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments to the board. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by designated spokespersons. The chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. Persons who disrupt the meeting may be asked to leave, and the chair may request law enforcement assistance as necessary to restore order. Thanks for everyone joining us this evening, and I'd love to, we don't have a podium this evening, but if we have folks interested in speaking, you may begin by introducing yourselves.
Does that mean I can start?
Absolutely.
My name is Crystal Nicholas from Green. Last week, voters in Paris, Maine recalled 2 school board members over their support of a policy that would have required district employees to keep information about student mental health secret from parents. Reported by the Maine Wire, the policy would even have required school employees to coach students on how to avoid making changes to official school records that might reveal secret information to parents. When details of the policy emerged, district parents revolted, gathering nearly 700 signatures to recall their 2 representatives. That's when Portland-based law firm Drummond Woodson convinced the board to hold an emergency meeting. In a performance both desperate and despotic, Drummond Woodson sought to influence the board to vote to issue a statement that the board would not accept the outcome of the Paris recall election. It is not a little ironic that those uppity voters that Drummond Woodson sought to disenfranchise are the exact same everyday people forced to pay these lawyers' fees. This is the same law firm that advises against my policies that protect children from coerced masking. COVID is over, is their weak response. It's time to move on, is their sophisticated legal challenge. To the mother of a mask-injured child, as mask mandates begin to reappear like lawyers at a secret meeting. This is the same law firm that claims, we believe the experts. Experts who said, there's no suffocation, masks are safe and effective. And now experts proclaim that a steady diet of sexually explicit content is safe and inclusive for your child. Experts, or shall we say sexperts, are more qualified to parent your child than you are. Complete strangers, wholly unaccountable to you, can insinuate your amateur status in the crucial business, and it is a business, of curating the moral landscape of your child's mind. We wake as if from a dream to find ourselves and our children riddled with the didactic content of brave humanitarian authors attempting to comfort your child with accounts of their fabulously scary premature sex lives or nightmarish body problems. Or are, are these contrived books attempts to be seen or attempts to see your child immersed in their ideology? And has the insatiable idol of inclusivity and diversity been appeased through the sacrifice of your child's innocence to a predator's intellectual freedom?
Thank you. We have other folks that are interested in speaking. Yes.
Christine Duplessis, 2 children in the district. Dear Board and Miss Med, Victoria Wallach spoke late last year stating that she represented the school boards and the school districts across the state of Maine, and that her personal opinion is that the public's use of the FOIA requests are a form of hate speech. She did not stipulate that her opinion was separate from the representation of the Maine School Management Association. How is it that Victoria Wallach, a lobbyist, can conflate her representation with her personal opinion, but our school board directors cannot do this? No school board member can speak for the school board, only the school board can speak for the school board. Wallach is but a government liaison and does not speak for school boards. To allow this to pass uncensored is to understand that the school board is comfortable name-calling parents who seek access to public documents in the name of transparency. We pay for the schools as well as for the government. We also pay this woman's salary so that she can insult us. Excuse me. What might she be trying to hide by concealing public documents? Clearly, this is a golden opportunity to build that trust I heard the board speaking about after I was cut down in violation of my constitutional rights back on November 10th. I requested answers at the last board meeting, and I hereby request once again that you issue a statement either going with or going against Wallach's statement. Perhaps the board did not support the measure in part because despite my mentioning it at the last meeting, nothing has been done to research this character assassination of our parents and our community members. Do a little work and follow the link in my agenda request instead of sticking your heads in the sand. What is the point of being able to comment and raise questions that you never have to answer? The time has come for a policy of accountability where the priorities of two individuals do not supersede the interests of the stakeholders. We're tired of having our concerns brushed aside with the excuse that they are unworthy to be heard. School board members and citizens who are not politically convenient do not get their concerns heard because there's too much control and absolutely no accountability at the highest level in our school board.
Thank you. Do we have other folks wishing to comment this evening?
I do.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jimmy Child from Leeds. Thank you all. So Dr. Michael Flood, a sociologist who specializes in gender sexual studies. Exposure to pornographic or sexually explicit material can have a negative effect on a child. It can lead to mimicking what they see. It can also have a negative effect on the way that they view sex, love, and relationships when they get older. Showing or exhibiting sexual explicit material to minor children is considered sexual abuse. Child abuse can include non-touching behaviors. Non-touching behaviors can be just as upsetting and harmful emotionally. Non-touching behaviors include showing pornography to a child, exposing a child to sexual acts including masturbation either in person or through digital, computer, or video game images. You guys all see the images I showed you prior to this, so we don't need to do that again. So in these books, these digital created images of what looks like a minor child is self-generated sexual content, sexually suggestive, shows sexual conduct. Learning is hindered. The environment becomes less safe. Minor children can lay eyes either voluntarily or involuntarily on the images, where it be anywhere else it would have a PG rating. Ethical responsibility. Behavior can flourish, but in order to teach it, adults who interact with students must strive to model and reinforce ethical and responsible behavior. That's what's in the guidelines. How stable is this environment with that type of material being, at the hands of minor children? Is this order? What happens when you now catch these kids performing these acts in school? Is it okay? Because the pictures promote that it is. The schools are the most cherished institutions, one court said. It is your responsibility to make sure anything that comes through these doors are the most safe and effective piece of educational material, unless this school is a school that teaches about sex, which I don't really think it has, that it is. So the Maine Supreme Court says that the board has wide latitude in managing the curriculum of its schools, and its most basic obligation is to maintain order in the schools and create a stable environment for the education of its students. So unless this school is based on sex education, then maybe we should just eliminate these picture books, and get back to the real teaching, because it's an unstable environment, it's unsafe, and You know, this issue is plaguing our country. It ain't just here, it's everywhere. You know, the fact that I have to be here and come out before you guys every time for 2 years now, you know, I'm trying to build a house and have a life. You know, this is very stressful for all of us, I'm sure it is for you, and I appreciate what you guys do.
We're
I
at
mean,
3 minutes.
all right, thank you.
Any other folks?
Hi, I'm Tara Levesque. I'm the one who did the book challenge on genderqueer. I submitted that November 13th, and it's January. So I'm just wondering, we're gonna give the books out to who's tonight? Is that what we're gonna be doing? And then on the they'll vote, and then on the 26th, they'll vote on the 26th, or they'll vote before that school board meeting?
No, so Superintendent Med will explain the process so everybody's on the same page with it, but this evening we'll get to hear more about the process that's happened to this point, and
Okay.
then, and I don't mean to be taking your time, but as far as your 3 minutes, sorry,
Okay.
but
No,
we'll,
it's fine.
the 26th is when board members will have the opportunity to discuss and to weigh in as far as how they,
Okay.
that way we ensure that board members have had the opportunity to read the book.
So, you guys haven't read the book, and when you do read the book, remember you guys have life experiences. You have an adult mind. These are kids that don't have that yet in their life, and when someone reads something, they'll interpret it differently, maybe than how it should be, or maybe that's how the book wants it to be portrayed. But just keep that in mind when you read through the book.
Thank you. Yeah, Tara, you'll actually have the opportunity to speak when we get to that agenda item because you initiated this process, so you.
My speaking isn't like
Absolutely, so because we all love public speaking so much, I'm sure you're looking for another opportunity to, but you'll have that as well tonight, so we can explain that to folks. Do we have any other folks wishing to speak this evening? Going once, going twice? If not, thank you folks for sharing your comments. That brings us to communications.
So I have some resignations to report. Laurel Dingley, who's a special education teacher at Levitt High School, resigned. She's moved to, I think, RCU 9 in Farmington. Her last day was on January 2nd. Patrick Bernier, who's an instructor in adult ed, his resignation was effective December 16th. Melissa St. Pierre, also adult ed, the college and career success coordinator. Hers was also December 16th. Monique Angers from Green Central School, teacher in grade 4. Hers is effective February 3rd. And Donna Stevens, an Ed Tech 1 at Green Central School, hers is effective tomorrow, the 20th. We have one retirement to report for June 30th, and that is Andre Hammond, who is a payroll specialist. So I'll just say out loud that we're working on a transition plan and making sure that we've got the funds that we will need to make sure that we are in good shape, because other people, I'm sure, read the news in other districts who have had payroll issues, and we will do everything in our power to not have that be our problem as well. So Andrea is going to be missed for sure. And then we have filled an Ed Tech 1 position at Turner Elementary School. That began right after vacation. And then, oh my goodness, we have had 10 substitute teachers start. This is the last time I reported. Yeah, not kidding you. And I will say, I met with Kristen last week, I met with Jana today, and both of them were like, I don't really know what to do when there's enough adults in the building. Like, it is a dramatic thing. So a couple of them are college kids, so they're not here permanently, but and most of them are sort of willing to work anywhere. So it's been huge. So thank you to those who out there, if you're listening and you've agreed to sub. And Amy Pelletier has it as a priority for her to move quickly when she gets a call or gets an application. So feel really, really good about that. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. That was a lot. That brings us to adjustments to the agenda. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
I don't think so.
Well, the only one that I would propose to folks and either a nod of heads type thing. If we look at the agenda, we have an executive session that falls under old business, and that is for continued discussion of the superintendent of schools evaluation. If there are no objections from board members, I would suggest that we move that to, either following 8.14. That way, folks that are here who have presentations and good stuff like that may want to exit left prior to a lot more snowflakes falling outside. Anthony? We can do it with a motion, or we can just general head nodding is general consensus is fine as well. I'm seeing a lot of fantastic. So we'll take up 7.1 after 8.14. So we'll have executive sessions at the end of our agenda. Thank you folks for your flexibility on that. So that brings us to committee reports, Finance Committee. Crystal.
Yes, we met this evening. We had a quick update on the wastewater treatment plant, which I think we hear again about this evening.
Yes.
Later on?
Not this evening.
No, not this evening.
You do have a report from the meeting we had last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's not agenda item
Yes, there's a-
8.12?
Oh.
Okay, okay.
So we can even hear about it like 3 times.
Fabulous, okay, because there's a couple things that we're gonna hear about again. So we talked about that. We also discussed property and casualty insurance premiums as our business manager has been going through things. The last 2 years have been under budgeted by like 12 to 15%, so we will be seeing an increase coming budget season. So that there are not any alarms going off when we do see those line items. We spoke on lease options for a tractor and an upcoming bus, which, do we hear about that one again?
It's an
Yes,
agenda
okay,
item, yeah.
that's an agenda item, so we will talk about that anyway. We also discussed our current energy supply contract. We are currently at a rate of 6.7 cents per kilowatts per hour. There is going to be a big increase. We're looking at other suppliers. We're going from like 6 cents to 12 cents. So another line item on the budget that we will be seeing a decent increase to. We will be discussing selling our obsolete map books that are in our district. That's also another agenda item this evening. Our auditors have requested an extra month to get through all of our stuff with transitions, but no major issues have been reported to Gabby. We reviewed our October and November financial reports, and we just reviewed and signed payroll and accounts payable warrants. It was a good one.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll look forward to hearing more on those various items as we go. PTB, Joe.
Yes, so I apologize for the confusion about the agenda, but we did have an emergency meeting.
That's what threw you off.
2 weeks
the
ago.
emergency
Yeah,
meeting.
right. And mostly associated with the recent kind of recommendations from the engineer on the wastewater treatment facility. Number of different recommendations were provided. We're still discussing some of them, and we will continue that at our next PTB meeting on January 26th. But the one thing that I think we're all making a clear recommendation on is what the agenda item is. We'll talk about that more later. Yeah, a lot of wastewater treatment plant discussion right now, so that's the update. Yeah.
Thank you. That brings us to curriculum policy.
And we're meeting next week.
Fantastic, thank you. So that's January 26th. And so maybe this is just a housekeeping piece, when we show on the agenda that the meeting times for those meetings are 6:30 PM, that's a little
Oh.
misleading. They're not really,
Yep,
they're not
I
really
missed that,
concurrent
sorry.
to these meetings.
I'll make sure to look at the next one to make sure they're correct. Sorry about that one, I missed it.
So they would actually be
5:30.
5:30?
5:30, yeah.
Thank you. So anybody that's following along at home, the PTB is 5:30, January 26th, as well as curriculum policy would be 5:30. Brings us to student representative report. Sydney and Mayla, did you guys play a little rock, paper, scissors kind of thing as to who gets the?
I took the.
Excellent.
So I'm not sure about the middle school, but the high school had midterms this week, so our schedule was a little bit funky. Had a half day today, and we'll have a half day tomorrow if we don't have a snow day. So that's
No
been
pressure.
so that's been good. Winter Carnival's coming up, so we discussed that in student council, and I have some friends who are already buying prom dresses. So, good things.
That's impressive. Sydney, did you have anything else? That was everything.
Yeah, that's all. Nothing bad. So.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. Best of luck with whatever remains for exams. Brings us to administrator reports. Kimberly Fuller.
Oh, good evening.
Greetings.
Everybody's doing well. We have had a really nice, calm start in the new year. Always between Thanksgiving and Christmas, when you're with 4 to 8 year olds, it gets a little busy. And we started our first week back. We had a whole school assembly that involved silly string, and I got to be the recipient. That was fun.
You're brave.
We had the highest sales between the elementary for our fundraiser.
So she's not gonna rub it
I
in.
won. Yeah. Well, it was either
She got
duct tape
silly
or silly string, and I was thankful it was silly string.
We're doing that.
Done that before too. This week, we actually hosted a clinical day for the coaches, and I know you're gonna hear extensively about that. But as an administrator, being able to sit in and be involved in that and to see the process and the learning that goes on amongst their group was really enjoyable, and I learned a lot, and I was very, I guess, proud of Elaine, who is the coach, instructional coach at TPS. She led the process and did an excellent job. So, now, is there any questions about what I have put in my report?
Questions? All right. Thank you.
Yes.
And again, that's brave on the string. Appreciate that. All right. Next. No silly string.
No silly, I gave it to her. I'd really encourage the primary school kids to sell. So we had our student of the quarter assembly on Thursday last week, and we invite parents, and it was, I keep looking at Mallory, she was there too, but it was a crowded gym, like it might not have been to code, it couldn't believe how many people were in there. Yeah, I didn't say that. But it was awesome. It was the kids just watching them clap for their peers, and it was like they were rock stars for being a good student, so that was really awesome. And then they had a pizza party that afternoon, and then the whole school won the school-wide goal, and we had an ice cream, each grade level had an ice cream party this Tuesday. And that, of course, everyone enjoyed that too, so that was nice. So that was all kind of helped out with the food services, which is nice because they can do it through the programs that they have, so it doesn't cost us anything extra, but it's really nice for the kids to be able to get that.
Questions? Thank you. That brings us to the Assistant Superintendent's report. Teresa.
Okay, on January 13th, we held our fourth PD Day for professional development for staff. Sessions included specialized training for special educators, curriculum development work, training for office secretarial staff, and unpacking of our mobile CS kits. These computer science kits have been funded through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. Governor Mills in September shared that the plan was that all Maine students would have access to high-quality learning experiences that provide real-world training in various areas of computer science. Within a very short turnaround time, Cassandra Roy was able to order and work with our business office for ordering and billing purposes and set that all up with the vendors. And our small but mighty technology department worked to get the materials opened and organized and distributed to our 6 schools. So I would like to give a special thanks to Dale Netto and Dave Grimmel for all of their work to ensure that these kits were accounted for, and I'm pretty sure Wally helped as well. Each school now has some combination of a robotics and programming kit, an augmented and virtual reality kit, and a coding and hardware kit. Our computer science teachers worked along with Wally on the 13th on exploring these kits, discussing lesson plans, and determining the best way to store all of these materials. And as we do, and I'd like to thank Mallory for reminding me to create an exit ticket so that we can have a response to the day. We had 101 staff members who complete the exit ticket, giving us feedback. It was a 1 to 4 scale, with a 1 being not relevant or not helpful to my work, and 4 being super relevant, very helpful to my work. So here are the results. We had 2 staff members felt that the day was a 1 for them, 12 thought that it was a 2, 37 thought that it was a 3, and 50 staff members felt that the day was a 4, so it was super relevant and very helpful to their work. And there are a lot of anecdotal notes that go along with this, and we will be using that as we plan for our March 17th Professional Development Day.
Thank you. Any questions for Teresa? If not, move on to superintendent's report. Carrie.
So just a few things, since we had vacation in between this meeting and that. I think the theme right now is budget. Gabby and I have met with multiple principals, directors. We finish those meetings tomorrow. So Gabby's been able to get all the requests in, and we are going through every line with every principal and every director to make sure that what we have is as correct and accurate as possible. So that when we do get to the point of bringing that here, that we've sort of gone through it. Gabby and I've already gone, this will be our second round through. We went through it last week, we're going through it again this week. So a significant amount of time doing that and feeling good about sort of the corrections and making sure things are in the right place. Feeling a little bit nervous about the dollar amount just because of those things that you mentioned, Crystal, things that are sort of beyond our control. So we'll be ready to go in March and feel really confident about that what we're bringing you is going to be very accurate for those decisions that have to come. Continue with principal meetings in December and January. Those happen once a month, sometimes more, depending on if there's anything additional to talk about. The Ed Leadership Team meeting, principals. We've done training with Drummond and Woodson around supervision evaluation. That occurred so that people feel we're all on the same page around that. And then also right before I sent out a district newsletter in December that sort of debuted a survey for parents, or forms for parents to fill out if they want to make sure that their students don't have access to particular books that they're concerned about. So we did receive a couple of requests. I know that Judith got one for 2 students at the high school. I think Terry got one for a parent who did not want her child to check out any scary books. It's awesome. So we've posted that on the website, and when I send out my next newsletter, I'll remind parents that they have that option, that this is something that policy allows them to do, and to make it a little bit more helpful, or make it a little more obvious for them to make sure that if there are particular titles they're concerned about, they can note that, and the librarians can keep track of that in the system and make sure that kids aren't checking those books out. So that's what I got.
Thank you. Any questions for Carrie? If not, we'll move on, not to old business, because we're going to do that at the end, to new business. And 8.1 is presentation by district instructional coaches. Drum roll, please.
So the presentation is actually behind some of you on the TV that is mounted on the wall. And I am going to speak on behalf of the instructional coaches. We created this as a team. This is really how the work is done in our district. Okay. So in our district, we utilize what is called student-centered coaching. The focus is on student data and growth. And the map is kind of tricky to see. However, this is, we partner with the University of Maine and it's actually a university training center for comprehensive literacy, which influences literacy changes at the local, state, and national levels. And on the right side, you can see a list of our coaches. Alicia Soroy is at Levitt. Kara Bodway is at Tripp Middle School. Mallory Murphy is at Turner Elementary School, and she's here this evening. Mallory, want to wave to everyone? Elaine Gammon is at Turner Primary School. You heard Kim mention that she just hosted our most recent clinical day. Amy Musso is at Green Central School. Amy is also here this evening. And Nadia Ryu is here at Leeds Central School, and Nadia is also here this evening. So coaching is for all instructional staff, and by that we mean teachers, ed techs, long-term substitutes, because students are at the center of our work. There are some additional notes on the slideshow that you can see. I'll read them because for some of us it might be a little far away. So student-centered coaching drives our work toward equitable teaching and learning for all students, helps to meet school and district improvement goals, and sends the message that everyone is a learner. Coaching creates a culture of learning by fostering a growth mindset, making learning transparent. It encourages risk-taking in a safe environment and promotes listening and asking open-ended questions. And a strong culture of learning is important so that teachers feel supported in their work with our students. These are the three ways that we categorize how coaching impacts students. Professional development for teachers, RTI, which are interventions. RTI stands for response to intervention, and coaching. Our coaches provide job-embedded professional development for our instructional staff, collaborate with school staff to create systems for intervention to support student growth, in addition to providing one-on-one coaching to instructional staff. And in addition to one-on-one, it could be group coaching. I know Elaine has been working with kindergarten teachers, and there are 5 of them at Turner Primary School, so it doesn't just have to be one-on-one. Here is an example of intervention work. And at Leeds Central School, teachers have been responsible for providing their own interventions until this year. With the help of Nadia, their instructional coach, these interventions are now systematic. A school goal here at Leeds is to increase math achievement in students. And after identifying math as an area for improvement, and it became a school goal, students were then given screeners to identify exactly what support was needed. Systematic interventions were established and training provided to the instructional staff members providing these interventions. That's also something that classroom teachers wouldn't necessarily have a great opportunity to do, is they might have an ed tech to come and help the students, but they would have to take it upon themselves to train that support person. This graph shows the total number of interventions needed and the number of successful interventions completed to date. So that's one of the areas where coaches can help. And now we have this great plan that our teachers were going to come out and talk at the meeting, and all of our teachers have other things that they need to do in the evening. I think somebody's coaching hockey, and someone's with a couple of them are with their children, so we're going to show you the videos, and hopefully this will work. Make sure my volume's.
Hi, MSAD 52 School Board. My name is Amy Duguay, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Turner Primary School. I have been within the district for the last 13 years. I am here to speak on behalf of Elaine Gammon, our literacy coach at Turner Primary School. I have been in a few cycles with Elaine, and I am currently in one right now. I wanted to speak about the little pot of gold that a literacy coach brings to a school. When I work with Mrs. Gammon, I am able to deeply reflect and grow on my best teaching practices. That is because we have meetings, we're able to think and reflect on what I am working on, what is going well, what is not going well, and why. I'm also able to create and implement effective lessons with Elaine. I'm able to co-teach with her or have her observe or watch certain areas within my classroom, which is such a powerful tool as an educator. Elaine is also able to help me create materials and gather materials, which saves me huge valuable time that I can be spending also with my students and on data and creating other lesson plans. And speaking of data, Mrs. Gammon helps me collect and analyze data as well to see if what I am doing in teaching is being effective, which is a huge tool to have. I highly recommend having literacy coaches within your school to work with your teachers. It empowers educators, it helps them grow, and it helps continue ensuring that we are doing our best practices at all of our schools. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time and all of my cycles with Elaine, and I look forward to more in the future. Thank you.
So you heard Amy use the term literacy coach. Sometimes those are used interchangeably. In this district, we purposefully set to hire instructional coaches, so they are just not limited to working in literacy. Okay, let's see if I can move on from Amy now. This is going to be a challenge for, oh, I did. Okay, I didn't practice the transitions.
Hi, MSAD 52.
Okay, so here you can see this is Connor Sear. The volume on this may not be good. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
How are you? Good, how are you? I'm fantastic. I have some questions for you about instructional coaching.
Great.
All right, first question. What's your experience with our school's instructional coach?
Good question. So my experience with the instructional coach here at Levitt, Mrs. C. Royce, has been we have worked together 2 times this year so far. The first focus that we had was building a unit for my sophomore classes, and that was focused on persuasive essays. That was a great unit. I'm still in the process of doing that right now with my students, and it's gone great so far. The other focus that we had was more of a mini cycle, and that was just focusing on my teacher's presence as a first-year teacher here at Levitt, and that went great. I felt that I got a lot of good feedback from her, and I think it's improving me as a teacher every day.
That's great. All right, second question. How has the instructional coach benefited you?
Another good question. So when I work with Mrs. C. Royce, she will come into my prep periods every other day, and then she'll come into the class period that she's actually helping coach. Working with her during that prep is awesome. She comes right in here, and we'll pick apart the unit if we're focusing on the unit and break it down, and seeing her experience as a teacher and watching that and learning so much from that, especially as a first-year teacher, has just been incredibly supporting and beneficial for me.
That sounds very helpful. All right, third question. How has the instructional coach benefited the students?
Great question also. So I think it's really great to have an instructional coach and working with an instructional coach, because Mrs. C. Royce will actually come into my classes and help me teach. Sometimes we will do co-teaching, and it's also just great because she can have an extra set of eyes on the kids and support them through the class period, and they can learn from her also.
That's great. Thanks, Mr. Sayre.
You're welcome.
Hi, Mr. Sayre. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fantastic.
You're doing great, Teresa. Thanks for the support, everyone.
Really are. Look at all that, like, media in
I
there.
know.
Nice.
Okay, and last but not least, here is a teacher here at Lee Central School. And it might be
Coaching
loud.
has helped me because I saw through looking at my data that my 3rd graders, who are now, well, last year's 3rd graders now in 4th grade, needed some focused work in fractions. That was an area that they scored a little weaker on. And so I wanted to delve into where I could improve their learning and their, their understanding of concepts and fractions. And so together we looked at the data, and we saw that in 3rd grade, there are some things in our current math program that they were missing some key elements. And so I signed up for the pop-up, and together we looked specifically at 3rd grade fractions, and in a very quick and fun hour, it was very entertaining, you shared with me so many tools and resources that not only helped to enrich my understanding of 3rd grade concepts and understanding of fractions, but also I walked out the door with a whole new like folder of resources to use, which I'm really excited about. I feel, you know, super confident as a teacher that I know what my students need and that I have the tools to meet their needs, but I love knowing that I have you there so that when I just need some clarity, or I might doubt myself, or that I need some help unpacking the standards, that you're right there to support me. And that's been my experience with coaching. And as a special bonus for me, I know my certification is due this year in July, and I needed 7 more hours. So it's been great being able to look at your offerings and know that I can get certification, recertification credits for that. So that's been an extra bonus. It's been so easy, so that local professional development has been really wonderful. And it's going to have an impact on my students.
And that concludes our presentation.
In regards to the professional development at the end, are those hours that prior to this, we were having to pay for our teachers to go out of district to get professional development? And now our instructional coaches are able to.
It's a snow day tomorrow. Surprise! I just really needed to entertain myself. I'm sorry. No, I'll explain, but I don't want to interrupt.
So yes, now that, so the process is that when a teacher needs to be certified, they have a requirement for either coursework or hours that they accrue. And we have a professional learning committee that oversees this and supports this work. Now we are able to offer in-district professional development offerings at no additional cost. So you saw Jennifer say that she needed 7 hours. 7 hours is hard to get because it means that you've got to go probably to a day-long workshop, and we would have to pay for that workshop. So
Pay for a sub.
and pay for a sub.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think that is a positive, one of the many positives that have come out of this.
So would you guys just give maybe one example of what each of you have done in terms of like a PD offering that teachers have been able to take advantage of?
Yeah, I'm looking at math learning progression right now, so that that there's an easiness in being able to be responsive on the spot and do some intervention with a child, like know where they are, being quick to assess that and know what to do with it. And so I offer an hour, but for each section, and they can choose a lot of choice. And we have a chat, and we have resources, and we start planning, and sometimes it's an opening for a longer project together, so it's really great.
Thank you.
So far, Kristen and I, we've led 2 book studies. So in the mornings, we've had 3 meetings on 2 different books. One was Hacking School Discipline. That was the first one, and then actually it kind of transferred over to another building, so it was very powerful in that way. We're starting another one at the end of this month, Being the Change. And then, so that would give credit hours. We meet 3 times, so they could get credit hours for this book study. And it just, and if anyone wants additional information about things, we've presented it to staff at our staff meetings, and more people have become interested in that. So they can get credit hours for doing a book study. And then Kara and I are going to offer a whole district book study on 180 days by Penny Kittle. We did go see Penny Kittle, so we're going to offer that district-wide, and they'll also be able to get contact hours for that. But just offering that district-wide to the power, like how much power that is to bring teachers from across the district together. There's so much rich conversation that happens and learning that goes on.
Thank you.
And speaking to what she just said, actually, it's a perfect segue. So as the MPCL partnership, we were offered the Penny Kittle workshop, which is highly sought after. She's a literacy expert, and so we went up to Orono, and there was about, I think, 20 from our district that went. And then for those that couldn't go,
I think each school, we actually presented on the information that was given. And so we asked the teachers to practice it in a staff meeting. We asked them to go back to their classrooms, practice it, and then at the next staff meeting to report back. There was many, many different types. It's from her book, 4 Essential Studies, book clubs, essays, poetry, and then there was one about digital production as well. And we were all just in awe. So it was really nice to be able to share that.
I was at the meeting where teachers reported out,
Yes.
so it was really exciting
It was
to
very
hear them
wonderful.
talking about these new strategies that they're using, so it was very cool.
Those teacher exemplars are pretty powerful because they see their friends doing it.
I think another piece, Jamie, is it's not just limited to teachers. Ed techs are able to do any of this, and they need the same, not the same certification, but they also need contact hours. So it helps with their recertification as well.
Question? Crystal, and then, yeah.
It wasn't a question, it was just something that I noticed, that I love that you guys are available for teachers who have 25 years of experience, like Mrs. Groover and Mrs. Duguay with her 13 years experience, and then someone who is a brand new teacher. I think that that's so awesome that no one's left out in the weeds trying to decipher the data, because it's clearly data driven. I think that's really great, and I feel very excited that you guys are here and able to do that for our students and for our teachers.
Judith?
I just wanted to weigh in on, at the high school, we had a book study also on the book choice words, and I participated in that. We had some ed techs in that as well. And then the other anecdotal piece is, I was in the class that Alicia Sirois did with Connor Sear, because they were doing research skills, and so they came to the library, and it was a powerful experience for me to be a part of having Alicia be in that class, because I got to also observe some of the strategies that she was helping Connor to learn, and that helped my own learning as well. And it was really it was a cool experience to see that and be a part of that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Teresa on that process?
I guess I would just close by saying I feel very fortunate that we have an instructional coach in each of our schools that is purely dedicated to that. During some of my research, and we had a guest at one of our clinical days, and she split between at least 2 schools, and sometimes the splits for these coaches aren't even in the same towns, and it's just really difficult to establish relationships, and I feel very fortunate that the board and the voters have supported having a coach in each school. It's been incredibly powerful this year to see the differences already in the staff.
Thank you, and thanks for the level of detail that you presented to us this evening. That's always very helpful to learn what does that actually look like in practice. So thanks for sharing that, and keep up the great work. That brings us to 8.2, and that is a presentation by Danielle Ellis. Where are you? Over there.
Oh, that's why there was a code. I thought it was something I did, Danielle. Sorry. Happy snow day, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Are you ready?
Oh, I'm like, what did I do?
I was just showing it to you because
I will, fortunately, the other superintendents sort of started the conversation about going early, and I was just like, I have a board meeting tonight, I can't do that, and right around 5:30, they're like, we're gonna call it, and we're gonna send our message at 7. I'm like, okay, me too. So I recorded it and scheduled it, and I was like, I'm gonna schedule it for 7:05 in the middle of the board meeting, because I think it'll be fun.
You just thought we were gonna be done by then.
I was hoping to just get some laughs in the middle of the meeting, that's all. It's good, the little things to energize.
Oh, this is more?
Yeah.
my presentation's back there too.
Danielle's ready.
I'm ready.
Sorry, Danielle. We got distracted.
That's okay. Give me a minute to get connected.
Sorry, I have a hearing.
Okay, so Carrie's asked each of the principals to do a presentation about our schools, and I got to go first. Lucky me. So this is just a quick update about the status of Leeds Central School. So first, the population of Leeds Central School over the last 10 years has fluctuated right around between like 177 as our lowest
during COVID years, that's 179, 177, and the highest we've had is 209. On October 1st, we were at 191. We've gotten a couple kids since then, but we are creeping back up. Our pre-K class is the biggest one right now that we've had, so if that trend continues, then our numbers will go back up over 200, I think, soon. And I also separated out boys and girls. I just always think this is really fascinating that every single year we have more boys than girls. It's, I don't know, there's something in the water in Leeds, I don't know.
Yeah, it's all that lead.
All right, free and reduced percentage. We've always had the highest percent of free and reduced students in the district, and we always fluctuated right around 50% until lunches became free for everyone. And then not everyone fills out the forms anymore, so we don't really actually have I don't believe that's an accurate count of the percent of people in this town that would qualify if everyone filled out their forms. But so you can see that it's dropped from our high at 53.08 back in 2015. But you can really see the sharp drop off. 2020, people didn't have to fill it out because of COVID having free lunches for everybody, and then less and less people have filled it out as it's gone. And my understanding is the state's going to continue to offer free lunches, so I think they're going to have to look for another way to figure out the percent of people in need in each district. But the reason it's a concern for me is because when you're around 50% or above, you qualify for some grants that you wouldn't qualify when you're below 50%. So it's kind of a bummer if that's going to continue to be the way they measure it. Here I have 11 classroom teachers in pre-K through 6. There's 3 special education teachers. We share quite a few specialists, but we have guidance, library, phys ed, technology, art, music, band, and chorus offered to all of our students. We also host the district's functional support program, and in that program we have 5 behavioral health professionals that work with us that help to make the ratio of adults to students more appropriate for those students that need those one-on-ones and such. And we also have really worked hard to get some social work for our kids, and we've done that by letting Spurwink come in and use our space so that we can have the kids that need social work obtain it much easier than if they had to go outside of the school to get it. Attendance is a concern. So the 2019-20 year, our average daily attendance was 94.8. 2021, that was the year when people were partially remote, so it was harder to keep track of attendance. It went up to 97.3. Last year it was 94.4, and so far this year it's 93.2. And looking at the chronically absent and approaching chronically absent, that's kind of a concern, because chronically absent students, we were at 84 days when I ran the report the other day. So students that have missed 10% or more of those 84 days, there's almost a quarter of the school, and then another quarter of the school has missed between 5 to 9% so far. And if they continue at that rate, being chronically absent, actually, there's plenty of research that shows that it's really a big concern for their long-term success in school. So luckily we don't have any truant students, and that is part of what's still going on with the COVID-related stuff, is people are being more cautious about keeping their children out. People are still getting COVID and having to stay home for 5 days. So I'm hoping that trends back up when people don't have to be quite as cautious about the exposure to one another. But there's no truant students, because that is unexcused absences, 7 or more in a school year, or 5 consecutive in a week, unexcused. Then you become truant. And we know these kids have been excused because they've had illnesses and such. So, but we're watching the names and the situations carefully to see if there are any certain situations where we can work with the families to help the kids to come to school more frequently. Special education, we have 45 students out of our 191 that have an IEP, so that's 23.6%. We also have 11 students who have a 504 plan, which is 5.8%. We have 8 students in the referral process for special education, so that's another 4.2%. So of the whole entire population here at Leeds Central School, we have 29.5% have either a 504 or IEP, or they're in the process. So the family PBIS survey that was sent out to everybody in the district to look at, each school has their own version of it, so that our families answered about Lead Central School, and each other school had their families answer about those particular schools. So this was good that we got the data in December, that we could compare with the data we did in the spring. So it was the exact same surveys, slightly different number of responses. In the spring, we only had 27 families respond, and in the fall, we had 44 families respond, so we had a greater response. And each of the questions, they were asked to either strongly disagree or somewhat disagree. So you had to lean either towards disagree or somewhat agree and strongly agree. There was no middle. You couldn't choose a neutral, like no opinion. So you had to either go towards agree or towards disagree. So our average score in all of the questions, and on the family survey, they get 21 questions, and they're in 5 different categories of teaching and learning, school safety, interpersonal relationships, institutional environment, and parental involvement. And they answer questions like, teachers at my student's school have high standards for achievement. And they answer on the scale of 1 through 4, whether they strongly disagree to strongly agree to that. So that's how we get those average scores up there. So when you have the average go up from 3.08 to 3.36, that's a pretty good jump when you average all those out. So I'm pretty pleased with the survey results from the families. And, whoops, I went backwards. I think that part of it is because last spring we really were feeling the disengagement of the families, the fact that we weren't connected because we were so, closed to the outside. We had people wait out in the lobby and they weren't allowed in the school because of exposure and all that. And so now we're starting to do activities again. And we have our friend Crystal up there who came to our Halloween celebration, and we did trick-or-treating, and we started doing fundraisers again. Our students went and did a Veterans Day ceremony. We have volunteers back in the school working with our students, which is so awesome. We had a really good field day last year, and we're going to plan an even better one with more volunteers this year. We've had our open house again. We're planning to go see a Maine Nordics game with families. We're planning a family skating night. Of course, parent conferences. We had a really, really good turnout for that. We started having our PTC meetings again, so we're getting our parents in and planning stuff. And at Christmas, our event was called Lighten Up LCS, where we put blow up and lights and stuff. And we even had a food truck come, and people drive through and see it, and it was a really great event. So those kind of things make the families feel more connected. It helps the staff and the students to feel the connection as well, and the school feels more like we're welcoming again, and that feels good to everybody. So I think that has a great amount of influence on why the score went up like it did. Now, we only survey the students in grades 3 through 6 because statistically speaking, apparently kids below grade 3 can't be reliable responders on surveys. So we don't survey our K-2 students, but from 3 to 6, our students, last spring, the average score was a 3.0, and this December it was a 3.11, so that's a pretty good increase. The students answer 11 questions that are things like, I like school, my school wants me to do well, I feel safe at school, students treat each other well, and so on. And they answer on a scale of 1 through 4 of never, sometimes, often, and always. So above 3 is good, and 3.11 increase looks really good for us, so that was excellent. The school personnel survey has 29 questions. It's a little bit longer, and that has 6 categories, I think. I lost the paper. Oh, here it is. 29 questions. They have staff connectedness, structure for learning, school safety, physical environment, peer and adult relations, and parental involvement. So they're answering questions like, I feel supported by other teachers at my school, and they're answering on a scale of from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So we have more people responding, and this is not just teachers, it's staff. The whole staff was asked to fill it out. I have about 50 people on staff, so about 32 of them filled it out this fall, and only 24 did in the spring. The score went down slightly, not a ton, but we are definitely looking to see where we can make improvements. We're picking that apart. We've had discussions at the building leadership team meetings. We had a staff meeting discussion. I did another survey that we're going to look at of specifically some of the questions to see if there's responses that they can give, because these are just, all we get is the numerical score. We don't get any comments at all. So the discussion leads you to the question, like, why would people say that they, disagree or or only somewhat agree with these. So we're digging into that further because we want to have a happy staff, and we really want to have them feel connected to each other and be really happy to work here. So the school climate goal that we wrote back in the summer, based on what we saw in the spring, in the grade 3 through 6 survey, we had the average score for students in my class behave so that teachers can teach was a 2.41, which is the concern. And so we wanted it to increase to at least 2.8. And then there's a similar question on the staff survey that says, as per the school climate survey for the staff, the average score for students at my school demonstrate behaviors that allow teachers to teach and students to learn was a 2.58 in the spring, and we were hoping it would go up to a 2.80. So these strategies that we're trying to put into place is more responsive classroom, class meetings, those kind of social and emotional activities that help kids feel connected and safe. The safety care is the district-wide program that we use for handling unsafe behaviors with students, and so some of those lessons from that are good for everybody to hear, so we're trying to incorporate those in our staff meetings. One of the changes that we had is we used to fill out paper forms anytime there was a behavior problem, and now each teacher enters it directly into the computer program that we're using, and we're finding that that's really helping to make sure that everything's documented and therefore addressed as things happen. We're back to having assemblies and rewards and word of the month and more recognition of appropriate behaviors. That was another thing that really we missed so much when we couldn't gather together in the gym. So we're really enjoying those kind of activities with our students now. We've changed some of for 13 years now we've been doing it one way, so we've kind of changed a few things up on our school-wide recognition of appropriate behaviors, and I think everybody's feeling like that's a good refresh. And we're trying out breaking our guidance lessons into two 20-minute lessons a week instead of one 40-minute lesson, because that way you can break it into like more frequent times to practice the skills and a little less lost time. So we'll see how that works out. So the data that we used for the student survey, students in my class behave so that teachers can teach, has gone up. That was very pleasing to see. It went from 2.41 to 2.55. So our school goal that we talked about, where we wanted at 2.8, is for the spring survey. So we still have some time to keep working on this, and we're going to continue to do that. For the teachers, though, it's another one where it went down a little bit. So this is a big one that we're really digging into. We want teachers to feel like they can teach and that the students are going to behave so that they can do that. So we're working on it. The other second goal that we set for our school for this year, as you heard mentioned in the when Nadia spoke, is that we're working on mathematics. We want to increase our student math achievements so that by the end of this school year, at least 55% of our students are going to meet or exceed the NWEA benchmark for their grade level. We've created a Tier 2 mathematics intervention team. Nadia's taught us how to use a Delta Math program Tier 2 intervention system that she'd used over at Turner Elementary. We're using screeners at the beginning, middle, and end of the year so that we can determine which skills those kids are missing so that we can fill in those skills with interventions. And we've always been putting our end-of-unit assessment scores on the math data. A data wall is basically a spreadsheet that everybody can access so that we can see how our kids are doing over time. So the data that we use, we can look at the whole school that's circled around with the red, and we can look at each grade level. We've got 3 years worth of data to look at, and as we go, every time we give the NWA, we keep gathering more data, but for our school goal, we're actually using the end of the year NWA, which we give in like May. So for this particular goal, we'll be waiting for our May NWAs to find out whether we got there or not. But you can see, like for the kindergarten class, when they're not currently in kindergarten, they're actually currently in 3rd grade, but you can see how their scores change over time. So you can look at them that way. You can look at grade 3, like from one year to the next, or you can look at the kids, how they went as a cohort. So it's pretty interesting how we can dig into the data and see what they're doing. We wrote a literacy goal also. This is the final one. We want to increase our student reading achievement so that by the end of the 22-23 school year, at least 45% of our students will meet or exceed the NWA benchmark on their grade level. Flexible grouping is something that our literacy consultant has helped us to work out, and that helps each kid to get instruction at the levels that they need, and it's flexible so that as they make growth or don't make growth, that the groups change from time to time. And we're always looking at what skill do they need next, what level do they need the instruction at. We're trying to find some resources for grammar instruction because that's missing from some of the resources that the district has adopted. We're becoming familiar with the new main learning results in English language arts. We have data walls on kids' reading levels, and we keep those up to date every time we give assessments. And we're reviewing and discussing data with literacy consultants. She's supposed to come tomorrow, so apparently I need to reschedule. So in the literacy goal, we also have the NWEA scores that we take every spring. We take them fall, winter, and spring, but the spring ones are the ones that we use to calculate our goal, and it's the same thing. You can see the whole school, you can see a grade level over time, or you can see a group of kids over time. And we also have a second data source because our Teachers College Reading Assessment, the NWEA is given on the computer, whereas a Teachers College Reading Assessment is given one-on-one with a teacher, where they listen to the student read and then the student answers questions. So it's another way to assess a student's reading abilities, and we track that data similarly using our data walls about the percent of students that are meeting a benchmark level that we have established for each grade at each time of the year when we give the assessments. Okay, any questions? It's a lot of information, yes.
Questions for Danielle?
I'd be interested to know how the benchmarks were arrived at, the 55 and 45%.
Oh, that goes back to the data that we had. So we went by what, let's see, on this one here you can see that 41% of the kids at the end of this last school year, of the whole entire school, we had 41% of the kids meeting or exceeding the benchmark, so that's where how we chose the percent that we said we wanted to achieve by the end of this year, so it's an increase.
Were they both an increase of 5% approximately?
I think approximately. We kind of like to use round numbers, I think. So we just, yeah.
Do you, as a follow-up question to that, how does that compare to what we might see on a state level? Do you know? And I'm not.
Oh, like what percent of students across the state
Right.
meet? I actually don't know. It's a really good question.
I think that would be an interesting piece.
Yeah.
Follow-up information at some point. I'm certainly not.
The state didn't have those numbers when we presented in the fall. They hadn't released them, so we couldn't compare at that point.
So that
They're not as easily accessible
Yeah,
as
it's
they have
weird.
been in the past.
interesting.
Yeah.
But I think perhaps in future.
In the future, that is a
That would
hope
be
that we would have those.
helpful. Did we have a question out here?
How long, so those are from the NWA?
Mm-hmm.
How many years back do you have data for that?
That's a really good question. Do you know, Teresa?
Oh, we have, I think the chart that we've made is like 8 years?
Yeah.
I want to say, that's a guess, don't quote
It
me.
would just be interesting, I mean, not that you have to give the answer, like how the data has changed.
Yeah.
So, were there more students meeting standards? Like, have the standards changed? It seems like they changed. No, they don't change?
I don't think the standards really change.
Okay. Well, it'd just kind of be interesting to see the
Yeah,
history.
it would
Just
be.
sort of little
The test may
compare-
change. I don't know that the standards have.
Right, that might be
Yeah.
too.
So I know as we get into the spring, I mean, we'll certainly have more reporting out, both from the individual schools and from Assistant Superintendent Gillis as far as some of those actual data pieces, so that we're keeping folks apprised of how our students are actually doing with real information instead of anecdotal sorts of things. So those are great questions to try to wrap into that. Thanks for updating us, Danielle. That brings us to presentation by Evan Shaw, Principal, Lebanon Area High School.
I'm gonna tough it out this time.
Yep. You get the interlude that I got.
No day silence, huh? Calm down.
Oh, yes, we do.
And now you can. Thank you.
All right, so it's my turn. So we're talking about Laverty High School because that's where I'm at. I have some general information. As of last week when I pulled the numbers, our current enrollment is 548. That's 132 ninth graders, 153 10th graders, 139 for 11th graders, and 124 for 12th graders. That's pretty consistent over time. Sometimes we have a class that comes in and they're 165. They're offset by another class that's 118. So it's like it goes back and forth. And projecting out further, it seems that this is going to continue to be fairly consistent. Free and reduced lunch students, our percentage of students that qualify for free lunch is 16.94% and reduced is 3.1%. That's around 20%. That is down, similar to Danielle's, probably not as much because ours was never as high. So the high school is always lower. It's down a few percentage points, but not as much as Danielle's. Special ed, we have 94 students with IEPs, and that is 17.1% of our population. And we have, as that I'm aware of right now, I think we have 3 students that are in the referral process. So that's takes it up a little bit more. More nuts and bolts, faculty and staff. We have 57 faculty. That includes classroom teachers, JMG teacher, guidance counselor, substance use counselor, special education social worker. So that's our faculty support staff. We have 16. That's special ed techs. We have a library aide, and we have student support ed tech. We currently also have some open positions. We have a functional skills program teacher that's open. You heard Laurel's resignation tonight. A French teacher position that is open. Support staff, we have 1, I believe, at Tech 3 position that's open, and our Dean of Students position is also open. In case you're not familiar with what our schedule looks like on any given day, we run an 8-block alternating day schedule, green days and white days, 4 periods on each day. The periods are approximately 80 minutes long. Every day we have an advisor period, HPT, stands for Hornet Prime Time. That's 20 minutes every day in between periods 2 and 3. On Wednesday and Thursday, we run an extended HPT period that's 40 minutes long. It allows for intervention time. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. We had 3 school goals for this year. The first one was to build a positive school climate and improve relationships between students, staff to students, and staff to staff, to improve the efficiency of our existing RTI system, and to develop and implement a week-long experiential learning opportunity for students in grades 9 through 11. And I'm going to talk about all 3 of them here in just a second. So our first school climate goal builds on the school climate survey data that we got in the spring of 2022. Additional data that we used in formulating the goal and the action steps includes classroom observations, office referrals, as well as teacher and student feedback. I have listed several action steps. These are the big ones. There are some other smaller ones underneath them, but these are the big ones. The first one was to improve communication among staff and students regarding school expectations relating to the Student Code of Conduct. I'm going to skip 1 and I'm going to go down, or 2, and I'm going to go down to communicate Student Code of Conduct and pillars, the 5 pillars, which are respect, honesty, courage, compassion, and responsibility. Those come right out of our district code of conduct and have been a focus of conversation during our HPT periods, which gets back to the second bullet, which was to ensure that students, our staff, have a binder of HPT, the binder of HPT activities. Historically, that's literally been a binder. I've got it all scanned, so it's now I'm working on digital. So the activities have all been scanned in, and they're all digital. And the reason that we were looking for that was to have some consistent activities that are around those 5 pillars, and the activities are broken down into those very similar areas. We also wanted to continue our student and student of the quarter recognitions that we've been doing for several years now, and add staff of the quarter recognitions. So we just did our, I think it was right around Thanksgiving, did our first staff of the quarter recognition, where we had, we put out a Google form for students to nominate staff members and explain why they were nominating them. And then the top nominees, the number of nomination getters, we put out in the second Google form for students to vote on. And our first staff of the quarter was Chris Gray, and we didn't have him, his wife and family come in and do it in the gym like we would the students, but we did announce it over the intercom. And so that worked really well. What I was most impressed with that, particularly it being our first time, I think we had somewhere like 45 different staff members nominated from students, and they started coming in almost immediately as when the form went out for them. So the level of engagement around that was really high. We've also been working on developing classroom norms, as well as refocusing our efforts on best of the nest stars, and that, similar to Danielle was talking about positive behavior recognition, and that's our positive behavior recognition. So when staff members see students doing something positive, write their name on a star, comes down to the office, we read names over the intercom. Kids love hearing their name over the intercom, not sure why, as long as they're not coming to see me, I guess. And then we do a drawing every month from the stars, and we get some gift cards for the kids. So that's our first goal, and they're based on the school climate data, which I'm also going to talk about here as it comes up. So I've got a couple of graphs here. So this is our student responses from our climate surveys. The blue bars are from spring, and the green bars are from this fall. And for the most part, there's one that's a pretty even, but for the most part, the bars from this fall's surveys are improvements, which is good, which shows us that our work around the 5 pillars is working. You will notice that the school safety bar, the green one, is lower. It's supposed to be lower. So Danielle talked about the responses, that kids' responses are never, sometimes, often, always. They were asked questions like, I've been threatened at school. We're hoping they say never. So we're hoping there's lots of 1s and 2s here. So trending towards lower number on that is good. That's why that one's down. So this is helping us to show us that we should continue the work that we've been doing with our 5 pillars. Staff responses, very similar, also improvements. There was one that was down a little bit, the physical environment. Was talking a little bit with some staff about that today. That speaks to like the building itself. We took this survey in December. At the same time, we have a custodian position that hasn't been filled since school started, and one that had been out for several weeks. So I'm not surprised that that's down just a little bit. And then the parent responses, aside from parental involvement, which was down just a little bit, those are all up as well. So things seem to be trending in a positive direction, which bodes well for the work that we're doing. The second goal is our RTI goal. This goal we developed as a staff based on feedback from students, staff, and some student achievement data that we were looking at. Our first action step was to develop strategies to support students who have had extended absences. Much like Danielle, we have some absence things going on, and that's an ongoing process to support students who have been out, because they've been out for various reasons. They may have had an illness or an injury, or what is really difficult to navigate sometimes is students who get concussion, whether that's skiing on the weekend or in a soccer game. So that kind of throws us a bit for a loop on this one strategy that works for one person doesn't work for another. So we're constantly working on that. Implementing the extended HPT 2 days per week, that is something that could say re-implement extended HPT 2 days per week, because we had been doing it prior to COVID, but we're not able to do it during COVID. And what surprised me, and I was pleasantly surprised, I guess, was how much people missed it, both adults and students, having that 40 minutes twice a week during the day to get support from their classroom teacher in the middle of the day. So we've been able to re-implement that, and in addition to that, we've also started using an add-on to PowerSchool, It's called Adaptive Scheduler, where teachers can go in, and if I want somebody to come into my extended HPT on Tuesday, I click on them, I sign them up for extended HPT on Tuesday, and it actually physically changes their attendance in Power School so that our attendance secretary in the office can actually track where students are supposed to be, because what we were doing before was a spreadsheet, and it was really difficult to know where students were supposed to be, especially if somebody called and say, I need to dismiss so-and-so during extended HPT. We always hope nobody called during extended HPT. It was hard to track them down just because it was, it didn't adjust to the Power School. So this actually does that for us. One of the things we also want to do was revisit and update the RTI teacher protocol. We have worked on that, made some revisions to it based on where we're at right now, and we'll continue to look at that as we move forward. And then communicate RTI opportunities to parents and guardians. That is also something that's ongoing. We had some information that went home with kids. We've had teachers have been sending home information as well, and we had that information available for parents when we had student-led conferences in November. And then our last goal is Hive Week, and you've heard me talk about this since school started, and I'll talk more details about it, but I have handouts as well as visual aids. So this is our course catalog for Hive Week. There are, I think there's 29.
Skipping right over
I
you
am
guys.
skipping right over. I only got 9. So
We can share in the corner. Surprise, we don't want you to know about it.
they have it available online. So
Thank you.
there you go. I think we have 28 or 29 course offerings for students. This is why I didn't hand it out first. I considered handing it out first. So first thing that we wanted to do was compile the summaries of each course and publish a catalog. We have that. It's available online for people to look at and to choose, to kind of get an idea of what they might want to do. Our second step, we wanted to use our video production students to create short videos that describe each course. We've also done that. Those went live and were available for everybody at school to look at, I think on Monday or Tuesday. So views have started to go up on those. They're interesting to look at. Some of them, because there's so many different groups of kids working on them, there's different personalities in the videos when they come out. So it's kind of interesting to look at. Students are going to be selecting their choices. We're going to have a pick. I was talking to Jason Breton about it this week. It's either going to be 4 or 5, depending upon what we think we need to do. From a Google form, pick 4 or 5 of your top choices, and then based on that, we'll sort people around and then let people know where they're going to be. We're going to be doing that. The form's going to go live, and we're going to do it during HPT. We just made the decision. I think it's like the last Friday in January. So it's like next week, students will be doing it. So very exciting on that. Then we're going to let students know where they're going to be what their placement's going to be. Staff members have been planning and preparing for this periodically throughout the year, and after they know who they're going to have, they're going to personalize it even a little bit more. And then our last thing for us to do is, after it's all done, is to reflect on the data and outcomes and see how we can do it better or what needs to be improved. And what I didn't get at is how we develop this goal. It comes from the strategic plan and from feedback from students that have participated in our summer institutes. And for like 7 or 8 years, we've had the Levitt trustees have funded summer institutes for students to come to school in the summer and deep dive into various things, whether that's, they spent quite a bit of time, 1 week this last summer up at New Orleans and dove into the Washburn family. Last summer they spent a great deal of time, or 2 summers ago, talking about the Androscoggin River. So it's been, those have been good experiential learning opportunities with very high positive feedback, and that also helped to drive our conversations about wanting to do it with the whole school. I can't give you an exact date on when it's going to happen. It's going to be the last week of school. if we can stop having snow days, then I can give you a date, but until that happens, I won't know, what those days are gonna be, so that's a little bit in flux. But the plan itself is in place and it's ready to go. And that's my last slide, so I'd be glad to answer questions if people have them.
I just have one question with like the Hive Week. I'm assuming will seniors have the opportunity to participate as well? I know that they end school earlier than.
This is gonna be for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders.
Okay.
So this particular year's group of seniors isn't going to get to participate in it. However, over time, students will have done it for 3 years.
Other questions for Mr. Chairman?
Is there any other schools that are doing this at all, or is this just, this is just you guys developing it?
In our district, we're the only school, and I'm only aware of, I think, 2 other high schools that are doing it.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll be interested to hear. I'm sure there'll be cool stories from Hive Week.
That's exciting.
That brings us to item 8.4. 8.4 is consideration of approval for a donation to Turner Elementary School from New Dimensions Federal Credit Union in the amount of $1,236.65 to support food insecurity for the school's community. It doesn't have to be phrased. Do we have a motion for that? Crystal? Do we have a second for that? Second, Jamie. Discussion on this one? Okay.
Is food free in our schools?
I think this is food they take home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like is it
It's like the backpack program, so kids can take food home.
like a food pantry kind of concept, or is
Yeah.
it?
I was expecting that was just money given to us to help with the cafeteria. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions? If not, all those in favor? Unanimous? That brings us to 8.5. And 8.5 is consideration of approval for a donation to Turner Primary School's pre-K classroom in the amount of $200. We have a motion on that one. Crystal? Second? Second. Kyle, Jamie? Discussion on this one. Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Brings us to item 8.6. 8.6 is consideration of approval for a Walmart gift card in the amount of $250 to Leeds Central School. Do we have a motion on this one? Crystal and Jamie were simultaneous. Either of you, you're fantastic. Jamie is second on that one. Discussion. Jessica.
Just curious, do you think that's going to be enough to do what you need?
Yes.
Sounds like you're going to do that school-wide?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions or discussion on this one? If not, all those in favor? Unanimous. Brings us to 8.7, and that is first reading and acceptance of new policy DC, and that is use of credit cards. Do we have a motion on this one? Jessica?
I'll second.
And Tammy is the second. Discussion on this one. Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 8.8, consideration and approval of Finance Committee recommendation of lease option purchase proposal through Gorham Leasing Group for a new Roundsmaster 3200 four-wheel, I feel like this is a four-wheel drive tractor.
Doesn't feel that bad anymore, does she?
And 2024
I called it a snowblower. I mean, it's cool.
Bluebird Vision Plus. These things sound very exciting. Do we have a motion?
So
Do we have a second? Sherry is a second. Discussion on this one.
yes, please.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Would finance like to weigh in on what perhaps the discussion was on this, or Gabby, either one?
Sure, it was leasing for the new Groundmaster 3200 four-wheel drive tractor. The amount financed will be $49,006.17 over 5 years, with a fixed interest rate of 4.48%. Or no, I'm sorry. Am I looking at the wrong one? No, that's,
No,
oh, I'm
that's
looking
right
at the
one.
bus.
You're good.
I got confused with the bus. Okay, that was the lower interest rate of 4.4, and Androscoggin came in a little bit higher, so we can save ourselves a couple $100. So we are proposing Gorham leasing for both the new Groundsmaster and the Bluebird Vision bus. We have 2 buses that will be coming, is it a month? Yes. One is fully funded by a grant, and the other one will also be leased. Here we go. Nope, there's too many. Here we go. The cost and the amount financed for this will be $125,000 over 5 years, with an interest rate of 4.4% as well, and that was also in Gorham leasing. Yes, lower interest rate.
I'll just add on to that, that the kind of the theme, I think, is continuation of, we're gonna continue to go up to bid on all financing packages, and we basically are selecting the best, financing terms, with both of these.
Gabby, those purchases with somewhat similar payments were embedded in the budget that was
Correct.
approved this last year? This is
Yes.
just the mechanics of, this
Correct.
is the entity that we're going with for
Yep.
the lease. So this is not something that
This is not
represents a
something that's getting
change in-
thrown in that was not budgeted for. These items were budgeted for, but
This is,
we're just getting everything underway so that we have 5 annual payments instead of all upfront at one time.
thank you. Jessica?
Can you remind me, are these replacement or additional?
So the buses are replacements. I'm not sure on the tractor. I believe this is an additional item needed to take care of the Turner complex of snow removal and groundskeeping.
And so if the bus is a replacement, the ones we have, are we able to sell them?
Nope, the ones that these are replacing are not good for sale. I think that they've been discontinued use.
Okay.
Other questions on this item? If not, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Brings us to 8.9, consideration and approval of Finance Committee recommendation of sale of obsolete MacBook computers. Crystal, do we have a second on that one? Joe? Discussion on this one.
I can provide some information. So we have 200 obsolete MacBooks currently. So we have a couple of programs that will buy them back from us. It went out to 4 different companies. And we are recommending going with Second Life Mac, which there are other districts in the area that have used. And we will get a buyback price of $65, sight unseen, so it doesn't matter if it's cracked screen, missing cords, and we will get a total price of $13,000 for those MacBooks, which will be put back into the funds to replace any other one-to-one devices throughout the district.
Discussion, questions on this? Anything?
How old are these that are being replaced?
7 years.
7 years.
2015 models. Yeah, and just again, I'll add what Crystal said, that you know, you might see there are unit prices in here that are higher than the 65 we're getting from Second Life Mac, but they would be inspecting them and approving or denying those units, and this is a guaranteed price. So 7-year-old MacBooks with middle schoolers are not all in the best condition, so we feel pretty good about this deal.
Jessica?
I just had a question, so it says fail by price is $7, what does that mean? I don't know, it's just.
The
Fail is defined as a grade F. See attached grade scale.
on the first sheet, so on the first sheet it shows an itemization with a quantity at 200, pass by price at 65, fail by price at 7.
They had quoted, no? Gabby, did you know, or do you have any?
I don't know, I'll have to check with Wally and get back to you on that.
It was presented as a
Yep.
firm.
It was presented as a $13,000 amount that they are willing to give the district for those 200. Correct.
Okay.
They don't even show it on here. I'm just the grading.
Other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, and thanks, Gabby, to you and your team of folks for diligence in the bid process and working hard to make sure that we are, in fact, taking care of all of those options. Brings us to item 8.10. And 8.10 is to hear an appeal of a book challenge in preparation for school board deliberation and public comment at the 9th regular meeting on January 26, 2023 at Tripp Middle School. No school board action will be taken at this meeting, and Carrie, I think you had kind of a walkthrough on what the process looked like, and Tara, we talked about that in bits and pieces back in public comment, so I'll turn that over to Carrie as far as what this will look like. And again, this is just reporting out. This whole process is detailed in IJJ, and that's how folks can make a process-driven sort of request to have any sort of material removed from our collections.
So received a challenge in November from Tara and talked through the process. And so Tara's followed that process all the way through, had a conversation with the librarian, appealed beyond the librarian, and that's when a committee was created at the high school that include, the policy requires like administrator, librarian, people in the content area, teacher, and community member. So what we will hear tonight is Tara's appeal, because the committee made a recommendation. It was a 3-part recommendation that Evan will provide a little bit more information on, but that the book remain in the library, that it not be allowed to be accessed to students under 9th grade, and that it not be ever required reading. I think those are the 3. And Tara's received the committee report and has appealed to the board. So that's the steps of how we got here. So you all have either got the book before tonight when we were a little bit worried about whether or not the weather was going to be a problem, or you've received the book tonight. So the board's process will be to hear from Tara tonight, hear from the committee. You've received the report, but I think Evan, both Tara will have an opportunity to speak and share her thoughts, and then the committee will also present that. You all will have until next Thursday to read the book. The charge is for you to not engage in any kind of deliberation or discussion about the book amongst yourselves before the meeting, because that deliberation process has to happen in public. Prior to that meeting, the deliberations on next Thursday, there will be an opportunity for public comment, and then and also an opportunity to consult with legal in executive session to make sure that you understand your responsibilities in terms of the law, but you also will have an opportunity to ask the district's legal counsel any questions you may have about any concerns you may have about the book, or what people are concerned about the book, and whether or not it sort of meets any criteria that would make you concerned about the book being there. And then the deliberation will happen in open public, that obviously Betsy will facilitate, and a vote will be taken, and the agenda item will be to consider the recommendations from the committee, because that's sort of, it's gone from the challenge to the committee. The committee's made a recommendation, they're appealing recommendations, so you're going to be weighing in on the committee's recommendation, is sort of how that's working. So that will be sort of the deliberation. And the motion will just be open, like to consider and deliberate on the committee's recommendation, for you guys to make a motion to either accept the recommendation or alter the recommendation or reject the recommendation, remove the book. Like those would be, those are the options. And if there's other options you want to discuss with legal counsel when they come, that will be up to you guys to do that.
So that describes the process a little bit. So Tara, you've received back the report back from the committee?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's anything else, I know you spoke to it a little bit in public comment, if there are other things that you'd like folks to hear at this point?
You guys, I don't want the community and the school board and the school team, everybody divided. Everybody just comes and fights. I stopped coming to school board meetings because everybody's just fighting. And I don't think that's a good example to show our kids. I mean, they can watch this on YouTube, and they're sitting there going, what are they doing? My kids, they're like, why is everybody yelling? I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out. I think you and I, we're complete opposite people, and if her and I can sit in a room and have a conversation without screaming and yelling at each other, and we do disagree. So that's where we need more people to read the book. What's your opinion? What's your guys' background? What is your ethics and your morals and what you find okay and not okay to put in our kids' schools? Because a lot of our community members have voiced their opinions to me and you guys that they're not okay with the book being in the school system. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw, were you going to report out for?
Yeah, I can. So the committee convened in I think it was 1st of December, somewhere in there. And we read and examined the book, Genderqueer, and we looked at reference reviews and grade level recommendations for the book. We also looked at any reviews that we could find. We found several. We looked at, specifically, we looked at the School Library Journal's review and Publishers Weekly review. We really tried to take a holistic look at the book, start to finish, and we also looked at any awards that the book may have won, which there were a couple. We also had based our conversations around a couple of some considerations, and that is that the library being a reflection of the demographics of the greater community, and that it's important to have access to materials in the library that have been vetted and not simply found on the internet is really important, and I don't think we can overstate that consideration. So we looked at it, and it's a graphic novel as such. It's graphic, like it's pictures, and it's I'm trying to find the exact paragraph I wanted to look at. So there are a couple of images in the book that are graphic and could be off-putting. However, the images are depicting, or the committee felt the images are depicting and representing aspects of the author's life and about the author themselves. Based on the content and book reviews, this graphic novel is for a more mature audience and should only be available to students in grades 9 and up. Our 3 recommendations, and Carrie alluded to them, were that the book remain accessible in the Leavenworth High School library, that at no time should it be required reading for any students, and that it not be made available to students younger than grade 9.
Thank you. So board members all have that report that the committee completed. Board members all have the book and have the homework assignment to read said book, and certainly to consider the committee's work and that reporting back out again. And just to go back to Carrie's description of the process, on January 26th, the board will have the opportunity to weigh in on the committee's recommendation, and we'll do so in open session, so that transparency around everybody's thoughts on the process is accurately represented. If folks think of questions about the process, certainly you can save them up to ask our legal counsel at that meeting, or you may certainly also send them to either myself or Carrie, so we can, you know, as always, if we have questions before the meeting, it's easier to find answers than to scramble at the last minute. So hopefully that explains the process, so we're all, Judith.
I just had a question about, will the public comment format for that meeting be the same as it always is? Like, will the public comment happen at the beginning of the meeting as it always has, and with those same time limits and that kind of stuff, and then the other stuff will happen after that? Thank you.
Yes.
Will the public be able to take part in the discussion that the school board's going to be having by way of maybe a question for a school board member, or we're just sitting here watching you talk about it?
Yeah, so, I mean, ultimately, the school board, the 9 of us that sit at this table need to make the decision, and the deliberation will be amongst those 9 members. But as Judith asked, I mean, we'll have public comment that folks will be able to comment during, as you are able to at every meeting.
So we will not be able to ask questions during your discussion?
Yeah, unless, so on the, it's not a question and answer sort of session from that standpoint. It's the board's job as a board to deliberate. So, Mr. Childs.
So when you say graphic images, Mr. Shaw, I mean, I've seen these images, you know, I showed them in one of the meetings, one of the images, like.
To great ill effect to some of our guests at said meeting, Mr. Childs. I would remind you of that.
Yeah, it is, but the thing is, with the graphic images, like, these kids are kids from the community, like if they're your kids and you want your kids to see that stuff,
So,
then that's
no,
fine, but like.
I mean, this is not additional public comment
I'm just
opportunity
asking
here.
a question.
I'm not understanding the question well enough to acknowledge that this is an actual question. And I think we've made it very clear that these proceedings are not an opportunity to badger our administrators or employees of the district.
Do you think I'm badgering somebody?
I sure do, yes.
You do?
I most assuredly do.
Because I asked the question?
Any other questions on the process?
I think you're
for
out
the
of
book
line.
review, book challenge from board members? Sure.
So it is important, and I will send out an email. If you do have questions prior to, I could compile them and especially provide them to legal counsel ahead of time so that if there are things in particular that people want to know, so that you guys get what you want. And then I do just want to say thank you to Tara. Tara, you and I have had a couple conversations, and I think what you said is really important. You have been a great participant in this process, very respectful. I had a conversation with Judith. She sort of portrayed the same conversation that you did in terms of like feeling like you guys had a good conversation. So I just want to thank you for that. And I know this is not a simple thing, and I know that you didn't do it lightly. So I really appreciate the manner in which you've approached this and the respectfulness with which staff has felt in connection with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
So we will look forward to this on the 26th.
We are
Brings
gonna
us-
go.
Yeah,
our-
I'm so sorry. If I had been thinking, I would have made it sooner in the night. I apologize.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 8.11, and that is discussion of budget preparation schedule and process.
So I think you have in your board packet sort of the schedule for board meetings that was provided at the beginning of the year. And so it's not really an action item. I think I'm just looking for some feedback, and I want to give you a couple of heads up. So you received the schedule for doing the budget process, which will be through all of March through April 6th. We have April 13th as an if-needed meeting for budget preparation. In this conversation that Gabby and I have had as we've been working on this entire process, very clear to us that if we wait until April 13th, we will not be able to publish the budget and the budget book for the community in preparation for the meeting, the budget meeting, and then the referendum vote. So the truth is that the 13th will be a board meeting, because if we don't have a meeting on the 13th, we won't have a meeting between April 6th and May 4th. And we've done that one other time during this year when there's been this month between, and it felt like a long time. There was a lot of stuff that built up, and we ended up having to have extra meetings for committees. So I think it's realistic to say that the 6th is really going to be the last time that we really can deliberate. I think, because I think the next day is sort of that deadline for getting it published. Gabby, I'm looking
It's shortly thereafter. I can't
Yeah.
remember off the top of my head. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, and then the 13th will stay on there as a scheduled meeting, just not for budget deliberation. So we'll make sure that we are prepared and that we can get all this budget work done in the time that we have. But that timeline's a little bit different than what I thought about when I first put the schedule out to you. The second thing is we didn't have, since I, just being new, didn't understand sort of how March was gonna look and what that was gonna look like, we didn't schedule any committee meetings during that time. But we need committee meetings in March. We can't not have them. So here's my question. Those board meetings in March are scheduled to start at 6 o'clock to give us enough time to deliberate. We have been in the habit of doing our committee meetings an hour prior to, so 5:30. So the question is, can you, board members for committees, meet at 5 just during that March? I think we're talking about just one committee hang on, let me look. One committee meeting for each committee in March, that would be at 5. So I just don't want to set up a schedule that people can't do because of work and things like that. So there'd be one PTB, there'd be one committee meeting. I think what I've got for a draft agenda, which I'll send to you guys, is PTB would meet on March 2nd with curriculum policy March 2nd, and then finance would meet on March 23rd. Those two meetings would be at 5, and then we go back to our regular 5:30 schedule
You said finance is the 23rd?
of March.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll send this to you. Like, I've got it written out so that you.
As long as I have it in advance, so my husband
Okay.
can request it all, or
Okay.
to get out early, because
Okay.
he doesn't get home until 5:15.
Okay, all right. Are there other people okay with that 5 o'clock start time? I just didn't want to do that and just then have everybody not be able to show up. Great, I will send you out a revised list with those committee meeting times and dates as well. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to 8.12, and that is consideration and approval of PTB recommendation regarding wastewater treatment plant, BioClear versus amphibian.
Amphidrome.
Sorry.
It's like,
Sounds like a
yeah,
sci-fi.
Yes, they're fun. But like we said, there are a number of things we're still talking about with the waste treatment plant, but the real heart of the system is either this Amphidrome system or this BioClear system. You'll notice there is a cost difference associated with them for construction, about $150,000 more for the BioClear. There's a couple of other pretty significant, other than their names being radically different, they're very different technologies as well, and they're very their distribution is different too. There's a lot of BioClear in Maine, and Dave Coburn, our facilities director, has gone out and inspected both of these different types of units. There happens to be a BioClear unit out at the Hannaford here in Turner. Another real major installation of BioClear that he looked at was over at the Botanical Gardens over on the mid-coast. I can't remember exactly where that is.
Yes, it is.
But, it's a bigger system, and it operates on a technology, I'll briefly explain, there's a lot of settling tanks, so all the larger components of the wastewater settle out in these larger tanks. So yeah, so you're dealt with what really is kind of a more gray water by the time it gets to either one of these units. And so the BioClear is a larger system where it kind of trickles over this medium, and there's bacteria that basically eat away at it, and it comes out relatively clean after that process. Versus the Amphidrome is a sand filtration system that has these big blower units that blow air back through the sand filter and keep it aerated. And so BioClear being bigger but less moving parts. So that was really the biggest piece that Dave really liked about the BioClear was its accessibility to inspect and review, lack of moving parts, and overall, it's a much more proven technology. It's more widely dispersed, more support in this region. So despite its higher cost, the BioClear is what we're recommending to move forward with for this system. So I don't know if anyone has any more questions about it.
So are you looking, just from a process standpoint, are you looking for a motion
To approve.
for the board to support?
Correct. We're looking for approval on the BioClear versus the Amphitrite so that Wright Pierce can begin the development process of really configuring the entire system, and then we can start to look for companies to start to do the work. This is the big part to allow us to move forward, even though we're still holding off on a couple of other things at the moment.
Because so far the designs have been somewhat generic, like
Right.
pipe goes to box, and now we need to detail that box, and the engineer does anyway. So.
Right.
Do we have a motion?
Thank you, Joe.
Goodness. Kyle and Jessica, that was kind of a, yeah, that was a tie.
They have a
Rock,
beat.
paper. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this. Questions? Comments? Anthony?
So expected maintenance is
So
maintenance is expected to be cheaper.
yeah, it's not reflected on the numbers they gave us. In fact, they showed maintenance numbers that were the same values. It was Wright Pierce did.
Right.
And so we pushed back on that a little bit, had some more discussion around that, and ultimately, you know, after again talking about these two technologies, having the prevalence of the BioClear in our area, there's really not a lot of amphitrite around here. There's kind of a reach for a second potential option. They say it's cheaper. You know, of course, if someone's selling something, they're going to say its maintenance is better too. But you know, you just look at the systems and you look at what they have. That you know, the large mechanical blower components and things. There's a lot more moving parts. The BioClear technology is very, again, less moving parts. It's larger volume as well, which kind of helps the passive treatment. So it just seems like a more reliable option, even though there's a slightly higher upfront cost. Yeah.
I'll just add, we have an employee who's, I think, a third time, like we associate a third or a half of her time to managing the wastewater, and we anticipate being able to
I think it's a quarter of her time, but.
yeah, but she goes there once a day, and we anticipate that being reduced.
She
that
does.
She will not have to do that as often.
She has to monitor our current wastewater treatment
Right.
plant very closely because of the age and the issues
Yeah.
associated with it.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to be able to back some of that out as well. Yeah.
So it won't necessarily reduce the cost, but it will allow her to do other jobs as opposed to doing this constant maintenance.
Sometimes she
goes once a day and doesn't leave.
Other questions or discussion on this one? If not, all those in favor? Unanimous? Thanks to PTB and Gabby and Dave for the continued work on this. This seems like it has been an incredibly long process.
It feels that way for us, even though
We
we've
just
only
got
been here
here.
a few months.
Thanks for, thanks for continuing diligence on that stuff. So the remaining items on our agenda are executive sessions, with the exception of other business. Do we have anything for other business this evening? If there's nothing for other business, I am delighted that we have a superintendent who has asked the questions of why do we do things a certain way? Like, why do we have other business, which has always seemed like kind of a nebulous spot on our agenda. So in reviewing other districts in the area, not very many other districts have a random other business sort of spot. So it makes sense to not have that. I think we had discussion at our last meeting about a proposed change to the agenda. Not having other business does not change board members' ability to change the agenda. If we look at the beginning of our agendas, typically we have item 5 or somewhere in that region, we have adjustment to the agenda. So typically it's administrators that propose adjustments to the agenda because they're aware of hiring and other things that would cause an agenda to need to be adjusted. Board members also may offer adjustments to the agenda. From a Robert's Rules standpoint, those simply need to pass with a 2/3 majority. So from a process standpoint, if anyone feels like there needs to be a change to an agenda, an addition to agenda, it needs to happen under adjustments to the agenda, and any of those sorts of things need to pass with a 2/3 majority. So that's, hopefully that's a little bit more transparent from a process standpoint. It's consistent with our policy. If we look at BEDBR, that talks about procedural rules. A, the agenda prepared in accordance with board policy shall govern the order of proceedings unless modified by a majority vote or the unanimous consent of the board. So that's a change that you'll see on our next agenda. So we'll start moving into executive sessions. I would, Ms. Nicholas.
Can I have one question, please? Is there any way for a community member to get anything on the agenda? And if they follow a process, ultimately, does the decision lie at the top levels, that even if they follow a process, people just don't feel like it, they're not gonna talk about it? Is that?
Yep. So, I mean, I think board members, we resend out the policy that governs how our agendas are prepared and disseminated, and that continues to be the process, whereby the superintendent and the board chair meet, discuss, and come up with an agenda.
And is there an appeal process to that, or that's
No.
it?
That's it. I think I just described just now, if board members, a 2/3 majority of the 9 board members felt that they wished to make an agenda adjustment, they may do so. And it would be under that adjustments to the agenda
Thank you.
part. Thank you. Do we have a motion for 8.13? And that would be a request for an executive session to discuss the Tri-Town Education Association's teachers, TTEA negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D.
So moved.
Jamie, do we have a second? Anthony? All those in favor? Unanimous. So we will, our other executive sessions while we're still streaming there are to consider the assignment of officials, appointees, employees, and to, as I indicated on 7.1, continued discussion of the superintendent of schools